The Gina and Maddie podcast.
Let's say good morning to our favourite parenting expert. She's got a book. It's called Little People, Big Feelings. A podcast is called Beyond the Chaos, and the Instagram is Connected Parenting AU. It is Jen Muir. Good morning, Jen.
Good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Jen. We are well now. It's cooled down a little. You okay in that heat yesterday?
Oh, my goodness. It was so hot yesterday, and it was such a relief to walk out to go to the gym this morning and discover the cool change was in.
We had our first sort of like soccer gathering, barbecue at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It's just like this. I could not think of anywhere worse to be right now than outside watching the kids running around playing soccer. I was just like, that is the pits. Jen, what do you got for us today? Parent guilt. You got a little bit of that to dish out to us, or are you going to make us feel better about it?
I want to make you feel better about it. I've just seen some new research that Bugaboo commissioned on parents, and it just found that 79% of Australian parents are suffering from really extreme mum and dad guilt, and that number's a lot higher when it comes to particularly the mums are feeling that a lot more even than the dads. And so I want to talk about why that's happening and what we can do to lower the pressure.
Why is that happening? Why is there more parent guilt now? Because I feel like parents are doing more than they ever have.
Yeah. That's exactly right. I think the biggest thing, so there's lots of factors. One is that, the village has changed, we've got access to more information. But I think bigger than all of that is that because we know more, we're doing it differently. I was at a conference on the weekend with the beautiful Maggie Dent, and I was just astounded, like 150 mums, all of them feel they are just not good enough at their mumming. It just reflected this research. And the guilt, and I was sort of like, really astounded, and I stopped and I said, the thing is, guys, what you don't realise is that, and I think I've said this to you before, our parents probably did not sit on the couch even once and think, did I welcome enough feelings, today? Or, was there enough protein in my child's lunchbox, So the guilt is there because we know more about the parent we want to be, and it's very real. The problem is we're sort of aware of all these different things, and we're trying to be all of that all at once. And what we really need to do is know that, it's just not something that has to be done perfectly. I always say it's like, how when you bake a cake, if you forget one ingredient, the whole cake will collapse. Parenting is not like that. You're not going to muck it up in one wrong move. It's a really beautiful, robust relationship thing, and we're allowed to just sort of move through it, mostly just being intuitive and organic. And every now and then you take the research or the information if it's helpful. If that tip works in the moment, you go, okay, that's good. But if it's not working for you, it's not that you're broken or your child's not working out. It's that maybe that's not for your child, because there's no child on earth like your child, and ultimately you as the parent know them the best.
Jen, you said, I've got a question I want to ask you in a second, but you said at the start of this that women feel it way more than men. Is that men more relaxed about parenting generally? Like why do we have to cop the guilt as well as sometimes the majority of the parenting?
Yeah, so it was like 88% of mums felt guilt, which is sort of 9 in 10, whereas dads were more like 69%. I reckon dads are still feeling lots of emotions. I work with lots of beautiful millennial dads. They're often worrying, am I providing enough?
Oh, yeah.
Am I, they've probably still got worries. It's just that this looked at parent guilt specifically. And so maybe they're not as focused on that. But, still a great proportion of feeling really sort of guilty. And guilt, it's not a super helpful emotion when it comes to parenting. What's so much better, I think, is actually catching what went well today, what did I do? And sometimes that might be the children are alive. Children are alive.
We're breathing.
They're in bed. They got meals today, and nothing else went well, and that's okay.
Yeah, it's us most nights on the couch. We just high five and go, we did it, and we're going to do it all again tomorrow.
Hey, Jen, last week I have a segment on the show called Dear Gina where people can write in for completely free, uneducated, unprofessional advice from me, just as a friend. And
I love that.
And one of the questions was how to deal with the birds and the bees questions with kids. And I did say I can't handle that question properly. My answer was to ask you when we spoke to you next.
Yes.
Also, it was to just let them kind of ask the questions and see how advanced they are and what they already know. But what should people really do? I know this is going to be probably an age thing, but how do you handle when that question comes up?
Yeah, so that's really beautiful what you said, actually, because what you were saying is sort of waiting for them to ask the question. You're looking for that interest. You're being quite intuitive. You're following your child's lead, which is really important. Couple of tips. One thing you want to do is from the get-go, where possible, if people have young children, using the anatomical names for private parts, not using special names, and just being really open and clear about what things are called. That is really important from the get-go. And then it's following their lead. So if you do get a question and it's a very young child, the biggest thing we want to do is, I love this, my mum taught me this one, tell me more about what you're asking here. So you reflect the question back, because sometimes a child says, I remember my cousin asking what sex, and he was like 3, and his dad was like, oh. And then he kind of asked back, what did you mean there? And what he meant was, what's gender?
Yeah.
It's like the where did I come from one. And then you sit down and you tell them the whole story, and they're like, oh, that's because Johnny that I go to school with comes from London. I was just wondering where I come from.
Yeah, exactly. Where did I come from? Was it Australia?
Yeah.
So that's the start. And then, you know what? There's so many good resources. There is a great book out there by a lady called Michelle Mitchell. And it is called, oh God, I can't remember what it's called, but her name's Michelle Mitchell. But it is a really good book for introducing the birds and the bees to kids. But the biggest thing is be honest, check where they're at, and respond with just as much as they sort of need to know. But it is better that kids find this out from us rather than from the internet or the schoolyard. So as uncomfortable as it might feel, the biggest reflection for us as parents is like, maybe it wasn't, think about how you found out. And if it wasn't as early as you would have liked, or in the situation you would have liked, most of us probably would have preferred if we got told, younger than finding out, in the schoolyard.
Yeah.
I found a book by Michelle Mitchell here. Is it Tweens? What kids need to know now before the teenage years? Navigating friendship moods?
She's got a new one, and it is called, I'm so sorry that I can't remember it off the top of my head. She's got a brand new one, and it is beautiful. It's for young children, and it's for introducing the birds and the bees. And it is somewhere in my house. I think my kids are reading it.
I think CJ might have found it.
Where do babies come from, and other questions for tweens. Yeah, yes. Beautiful.
Great. Yeah. That's better than what I did with Jackie. I think we did nothing. Just in hindsight, wasn't very good.
So if we have time, I have a really funny story.
Yeah.
I knocked this off with my son really early. I had a book called It's Not the Stork, which is also quite a good one for much younger children. I read It's Not the Stork to my son because I was pregnant with my 4th child. I thought, look, he must be wondering. So I read it to him. I got to the big page, which is sort of the big deed and everything. And I said, any questions? He just said, not really, all good. So, yep, I understand how the 4 of us got to be born, all good. And that was it. And then about a year later, he comes home from school ashen. He was white. I said, what's wrong? He goes, my friends and I got bored at lunch and we decided to sort of look up what the birds and the bees are, and we sort of worked it out. I said, but don't you remember we read that book? We did all this. And he said, no, I have no memory of this. So my biggest tip to parents is that actually not only do you have to do it once, you have to keep doing it. So it might be a conversation in the car that you repeat. It might be that you just bring it up every now and then, remember about that. And then as kids get older, there are lots of other topics, that we sort of need to get into that become relevant as they get access to the internet.
Yeah.
But, it's really repeating that conversation, because it's something that, because it has very little meaning for them, it goes in one ear and out the other. Let me tell you that.
Love it, Jen. Always great advice from you. People can check out Jen on Instagram, Connected Parenting AU, and the book is Little People, Big Feelings, podcast Beyond the Chaos. Jen, have a fantastic day.
Oh, you too, guys. Thanks so much for having me on.
Jen.
Our pleasure.
The Gina and Maddie Podcast.
For more great comedy shows like this, head to novapodcast.com.au.